Something urgent has happened that has shaken the Russian army. Vampires have flooded the sky over the battlefield. Epic footage from the front lines. The defense of Pokrovsk has reached a new level. A top-secret weapon is in action. Putin's roars have faded into oblivion. The RDK has stirred up unprecedented chaos. All this in our episode of Hellpoint. They gave the enemy a real surprise. Instead of confetti explosives, it will be hard to hide your emotions. A nightmarish terror at the front line. Vampires are searing themselves into the minds of Russians. They even appear in their dreams. And while the enemy is gripped by panic, our drone operators are performing flawlessly. We'll tell you how they managed to do it in just a moment.
Riding in an armored Humvee with extra protection against drones, we're heading out to the positions of the heavy bombers from the NGU Rubish Brigade. Maximum speed, that's also a safety requirement, because enemy drones are constantly lurking in the sky over the Seversky direction. Jump out of the vehicle, grab the drone and supplies, and quickly hide everything. The enemy is constantly monitoring our logistics. That's why we're so cautious. Then we wait for darkness, because vampires are nocturnal. The bomber crew consists of 2 people. Today the pilot is a fighter with the call sign Heisenberg, and he's assisted by the second pilot, whose call sign is Dobry, kind.
Right now the drone is being reloaded, and then we'll be laying mines in possible areas where the enemy might move in case of an assault.
After several sorties, the crew thoroughly mines the designated area. Now, the enemy will be in for a surprise here. Everything has to be done quickly, but at the same time carefully, says Heisenberg. The drone can be loaded with almost 15 kilograms of useful cargo, either ammunition or supply sent. It can easily tip over if you make a sudden movement. And this is under conditions where the Russians are actively hunting the vampires right now.
It's big, and they're tracking it. That's why, like I said, everything has to be done as quickly as possible, but at the same time, smoothly. They actually have a direct order. When the drone flies out in one direction and comes back, everyone is waiting for it. So this route back and forth is already ineffective and risky. You have to maneuver.
What surprises drone operators the most, they say, is the behavior of the occupiers, especially their constant assaults. Despite heavy losses, their command keeps sending new units to capture this or that tree line.
So what motivates them, the enemy? Well, as I understand it, their motivation is tough, and not everything is driven by money for them. Apparently they are motivated by the fact that failing to follow an order, well, there was only one consequence there, that's what they say.
In the Seversk direction, according to our defenders, the enemy now rarely uses vehicles, tries to move in small groups, and resorts to new tricks as well, says Dobry. There have appeared so-called kamikazes who try to carry explosives on their own backs to our positions.
One group goes, 2 people, they're carrying some backpacks, trying to get them closer, they throw them, then they leave, and those backpacks explode. They're trying to do it by hand, not with drones, not with FPVs. It's a proper explosion, you could say, like a TM mine.
Well, I don't think many of them make it back.
Yeah, they're not able to make it back.
Dobry himself has been at the front since 2023. He started out in the infantry. He's only on his first rotation working with the vampires. He says his main motivation now is to protect his family. At home, his wife and little daughter are waiting for the soldier.
My wife really didn't want me to go, but she understood that it was necessary. But she didn't want me to. We have a small child. Our daughter was just born. My daughter was 2 months old when I went to serve. That's the situation, I had to go.
To support the tremendous work of our defenders, you can join the fundraising campaign for the Rubish Brigade to provide electronic warfare systems, which will help further protect our soldiers so that each of them can return home to their families after victory. Yehor Romaklo, Oleksiy Yevchenko, and Yuri Ostapchuk. Fakti ICTV, United News.
The road to Pokrovsk is a real obstacle course. The enemy is lying in wait. The Ukrainian armed forces are almost right behind them. Drones are destroying any attempts by the occupiers to advance. Putin's mercenaries are doing everything they can to hold on. An obstacle course, that's exactly what the enemy soldiers look like as they flee from our devastating strikes. These shots are striking. The city is being ground down. See what it looks like right now in the following report.
To get to Pokrovsk, you need not only armor but also strong nerves. The road here is constantly under the watchful eye of enemy artillery and drones.
Right now, the hardest part is when you enter a certain combat zone, especially Pokrovsk, which is the hottest direction, the hottest city at the moment. So getting in and out completely is the challenge. It's not as dangerous inside the city itself as it is on this logistical route.
As you enter Pokrovsk, it's hard to tell where the line is between silence and battle. Everything here looks deserted, but the work of the military never stops.
On our section they don't move much, and even if they do, our guys usually take care of them with Mavic drones. It's not clear who will waste their ammo on them, because they just run around below.
Here, drone operators work around the clock, searching for equipment, movements, positions, the enemy, anything that can be destroyed.
Tell us, during the time we've been here with Umka, what have you managed to destroy? It seems like you always destroy something, you almost never come up empty-handed.
We've destroyed several vehicles, and before you arrived we also took out a few more. On average in each shift we destroy about 10 vehicles, the 300 and the 200.
Pokrovsk, which once lived peacefully, is now completely destroyed, and with each passing day it becomes more and more like a ghost town.
We went out for a short walk around Pokrovsk because, according to our intelligence, the enemy's aircraft have flown away and most likely there won't be any airstrikes on the city in the near future. But what I saw, of course, is striking because I have been to Pokrovsk many times before, back when I was a civilian journalist, when this place was completely peaceful. And now I don't recognize it at all because everything here is completely destroyed. The houses are burned out and there are shards and glass lying everywhere. In other words, the Russians are gradually wiping this city off the face of the earth.
But even under such conditions, there are still people who remain here.
No, there's nowhere to go.
But it's really scary.
Yes, it's scary. And nobody needs me anywhere else.
Army TV cameraman Umit Sametov. He himself from Pokrovsk last had coffee here on his birthday back in 2022. Now he doesn't recognize his hometown. I see the horror brought by Russia, the Russian Federation, the Russian world. And this, I have never seen a city like this, and I couldn't even imagine it in my worst nightmares, that this would happen to my hometown, to my little homeland. And while the enemy is wiping out cities, these guys are not giving him any rest. The Dovbush Hornets, volunteers who know what they are fighting for. We need people who are motivated to work, to kill, to destroy. And simply not just sit around doing nothing. They are ready to come up with something new, to make suggestions. Yuri Lozenko, Yevhen Nazarenko, Army TV for We Are Ukraine Marathon, United News. At last, a top-secret weapon has been unveiled in Ukraine. It will sweep away everything in its path. Weapons production is scaling up. The enemy senses its imminent end. In the Lyman area, Putin's soldiers really got themselves into trouble and took a beating from the Ukrainian defenders. We'll tell you right now in this report what was destroyed from the notorious arsenal. It is tough, agile, and versatile. The Ukrainian army has received a new ground drone called Dodger. The arsenal of the armed forces of Ukraine has been reinforced with a new technological ally, the unmanned ground robotic system Dodger. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has officially codified and approved this innovation for use. This development by Ukrainian engineers is already ready for service on the front lines. The system was created taking into account the real combat experience of Ukrainian units. The name Dodger comes from English, meaning one who dodges. It's no coincidence that this robot is mobile. It is maneuverable, has a low profile, and is almost invisible on the terrain. Despite its modest size, it can carry up to 250 kilograms of useful payload, including ammunition, equipment, or wounded personnel. Dodger is a multifunctional platform capable of performing a wide range of tasks. Specifically, it can evacuate wounded under fire, deliver ammunition and cargo to hard-to-reach positions, and deploy rapid minefields. It also participates in the tactical logistics of frontline units. A distinctive feature of the system is the armored protection of its body. It is resistant to bullets and shrapnel, which allows it to operate in high-risk combat zones. Thanks to this, the Dodger can keep working even when regular vehicles are forced to retreat. At a time when combat operations increasingly depend on speed, flexibility and autonomy, such solutions become indispensable. Ukrainian ground drones, just like FPV aviation, are shaping a new reality of modern warfare, where technology fights side by side with humans. Meanwhile, in the Lyman area, the enemy has lost its eyes and Irsa strike was delivered against the Murom and the Selov Mone electronic warfare system. In the Lyman direction, Ukrainian pilots from the Signum Battalion of the 53rd Separate Mechanized Brigade, named after Prince Volodymyr Monomakh, delivered a powerful strike against the enemy's critically important equipment. As a result of precise actions, several targets were destroyed at once, including a Murom video surveillance complex and a Selokmon electronic warfare system. The unit reported that Russian forces are actively moving equipment to the Lyman direction. They are trying to prepare for another wave of assaults. However, Ukrainian drones keep the enemy under constant pressure, not allowing them to maneuver freely. Every piece of equipment that appears within sight becomes a potential target. And that target doesn't last long. During the latest operation, the battalion's pilots destroyed a Ural truck and an armored personnel carrier, a shelter with vehicles and a passenger car, as well as the Murom visual surveillance system, which served as the enemy's eyes on the battlefield, as well as the Selokmon electronic warfare system capable of blocking the operation of drones and video communications. The battalion emphasized that even such a sophisticated electronic warfare system as Silac is unable to counter a drone when it operates precisely and decisively. Ukrainian operators continue to methodically deprive the enemy of critical tools, surveillance and communications, disrupting logistics and limiting their ability to coordinate assault operations. In the Lyman direction, the systematic blinding and deafening of the occupying forces continues. Meanwhile, Poland is developing a plan to evacuate works of art in the event of a Russian invasion. Amid the growing threat from Russia, Poland has begun preparing a large-scale plan to protect its national cultural heritage. The country's Ministry of Culture reported that the project provides for the evacuation of the most valuable works of art from both state and private collections. This is in case of escalation or invasion. The initiative is based not on abstract scenarios, but on real experience gained in 2022 while assisting Ukraine. At that time, Polish institutions received Ukrainian exhibits, saving them from destruction and looting. Now, a similar plan is being developed for domestic use, but this time aimed at protecting Polish museums. The Polish Ministry of Culture emphasized that the country's museums can no longer operate under the assumption of theoretical safety. Cultural heritage has found itself in a zone of strategic risk, and its protection is now part of the nationwide defense policy. This goes hand in hand with strengthening the borders and plans to increase the number of armed forces personnel to 500,000 service members. The responsibility for developing the evacuation plan has been assigned to Polish Army veteran retired Colonel Maciej Mapisiak, who heads the Department of Security and Crisis Management. His task is to organize logistics, identify priority sites, and establish international cooperation. Recently, an office of the NASAMS manufacturer opened in Ukraine. Norway and Kongsberg are strengthening air defense together with Ukrainian engineers. On Sunday, the Ukrainian office of the Norwegian company Kongsberg Defense Aerospace, one of the world's leading arms manufacturers, began operations. Weaponry. It is best known for developing the NASAMS air defense systems, which are already protecting Ukrainian cities from Russian missiles and drones. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reported that the opening of the representative office is part of a strategic partnership between Ukraine, Norway and Kongsberg. The main goal is to expand joint projects in the field of air defense. In particular, this includes developing new solutions based on the NASAMS systems to strengthen the protection of civilians and critical infrastructure. The Defense Ministry emphasizes that the development of air defense is one of the country's key national priorities. According to the ministry, just in the current month, Russia has launched more than 500 missiles and drones at Ukrainian territory. In light of this, special attention is being given to scaling up production and accelerating the delivery of interception systems. The opening of the Kongsberg company office in Ukraine creates new opportunities for closer engineering and manufacturing cooperation between Ukrainian and Norwegian specialists. In particular, this concerns increasing the effectiveness of existing air defense systems, developing new solutions for the protection of airspace and maritime areas, as well as advancing technologies in the field of interceptors. These are areas in which Kongsberg holds leading positions worldwide. In addition to the technical and production aspects, the project is also supported financially by the Norwegian government, which once again confirms their trust in the Ukrainian defense industry and their willingness to develop a long-term strategic partnership. The Ministry of Defense expects that the first tangible results of this cooperation will become evident in the very near future. That's all for today. Tune in for the next news update tomorrow.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Shocking revelation. Putin has been hiding this weapon for years, and now everything has changed. RDK fighters stumbled upon it completely by accident and pulled off something phenomenal. Electronic warfare systems. Now it's all out in the open. The Kremlin used these tools to intimidate NATO, but now the enemy is in a panic. Drones will now strike the enemy dozens of times harder, stronger. Everything about this coming up next.
They call their electronic warfare systems the best in the world. Russia indeed has some of the most powerful EW systems in the world. The Russian occupiers are trying to intimidate NATO, claiming that all of the alliance's aviation, space, radar and other systems will be disabled. The enemy's electronic warfare systems are actively operating on the front lines, and because of their effects, Ukrainian drones often fail to reach their targets.
UHAM, proposed control channel, Upravlение Unosu control channel. A control channel for an unmanned aerial vehicle has been detected. When detected, we activate jamming.
But is Russian rep really as powerful as it is portrayed, and can it be disabled?
Russian electronic warfare is actually effective, largely due to the sheer number of devices they have produced. They are able to create certain obstacles. However, these obstacles only affect the areas that have been actively developed in other countries, namely in NATO countries.
These exclusive shots with data on enemy electronic warfare systems were shown to us by representatives of the Russian Volunteer Corps. The soldiers who have been fighting against Putin's regime since August 2022 declassified the system's parameters and gained access to important information.
The work took about 8 months. It was very difficult. We didn't just involve a large number of people, but the result actually even exceeded our expectations.
The ship-based station Anchar ARDK, the Russian electronic warfare complex Terada 2C, and the coastal station Ozon. These are relatively new, and as the criminal henchmen boast, powerful electronic warfare systems designed to disable satellites, suppress navigation and communications. However, in reality, they are vulnerable, the RDC assures.
Zone is a system. Ozone is a system that operates using the so-called over-the-horizon method. There are a lot of technical aspects there simply related to basic elementary physics. This system allows for influence on targets beyond the horizon, below the horizon line, using certain tools. But the system is extremely raw and absolutely cannot withstand temperature changes. And if the humidity level exceeds 68%, that's it stops working.
In the RDC, they explain that any electronic warfare system is not just hardware, it's about modes and frequencies, heat dissipation, algorithm songs. You know the parameters of electronic warfare systems. You can deceive the enemy, blind them, and an eagle without sight loses its power.
We managed to understand the entire architecture. These are all institutes, vectors, directly related to scientific development. How it is applied, what plans are made, where it is tested, and what is needed for it. The economy, the entire system as a whole.
They also know the routes along which the occupiers move their powerful electronic warfare systems, and this definitely undermines Russia's security. After all, Ukrainian drones and missiles will be able to avoid electronic traps and destroy targets in the enemy's rear more effectively.
On duty will be much easier. On duty will be...
Undoubtedly, it will be much easier. In any case, when we understand what the enemy is doing and how they are doing it, we can prepare some countermeasures in advance. By intercepting certain signals, by intercepting traffic, we understand that this particular system is deployed here.
Alexander explains that the operation to declassify data from Russian command posts was made possible thanks to the so-called mole farm, that is, people who mostly worked for money.
In reality, there are people who perform some minor functions within a large operation. These are people who work. In the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, there are people who work in various units, people who work at training grounds, including people who work in scientific research institutes involved in development. Almost everything is done for money. Let's put it that way.
Ordeka also knows the names of those who implemented their formulas into the EW systems.
Or we know all of these people.
We know about all of these people. Their last names, first names, passport details, where they work. All of these people are in any case responsible for this. They are guilty of the shelling. They are directly involved in the war. And all of these people must be held accountable.
Obviously, many of our viewers will have the question, why talk about all of this? The enemy could use this information and improve their system. REP. However, the RDC assures that this is not just software on a flash drive or a rifle in a store. It takes years, people, and billions of dollars.
The information is already out there, and in order to...
The information is already out there, and to rebuild the logic and structure of the system's architecture itself, Russia will no longer be able to shut down dozens of scientific institutes or replace the staff, which numbers in the tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of people. They will no longer be able to catch up in the context of modern warfare, where everything is developing very dynamically. That is, the means that were used on the front 3-4 months ago may already be completely ineffective today.
The RDK says that Russia should start thinking about its own security, especially since such operations inside the aggressor country will continue in the future.
We will try to do it more often, with high quality and on a larger scale.
Mikhailo Maniliuk, Alexander Krulikov, Serhiy Kilimnik. Details, Intermarathon TV channel, United News.
Ukraine has achieved impressive success. The strike delivered against Putin's positions was so powerful that smoke was rising even from his call. The missile has already hit the immediate target of Putin's army. The reaction in the Kremlin was candid. Cries rang out after the strike. Now such roasting of the occupiers will become a regular occurrence. The new weaponry is already in service with the armed forces of Ukraine, for which it has received recognition from the entire world. What is known about this deadly force that will sweep away the occupiers both at the front and in the rear? We'll tell you about it in just a moment.
At a time when Russian aggression does not cease, Ukrainian long-range weaponry becomes not only a symbol of strength, but also a real guarantee of security.
The missile program is showing good progress. And although this is a difficult task, we are gradually getting closer to being able to use our own missiles and not just rely on missiles supplied by our partners.
In 2025, there was a breakthrough in the production of Ukrainian missiles. The greatest anticipation was around the production of a domestically made ballistic missile. And now it has happened.
I believe that the curator was chosen well and that the program is separated from other programs, that each missile system and missile type has its own curator and its own manager. This is a positive development. As far as I know, tests took place in mid-May, which are being regarded as extremely successful. The missile covered almost 300 kilometers and destroyed a Russian command post. And it is very important that this was a combat use.
A Ukrainian-made ballistic missile traveled nearly 300 kilometers and destroyed a Russian command post.
The warhead of this missile weighs over 400 kilograms, and that's a very powerful arsenal. For comparison, the new American ballistic missile has a warhead of only 91 kilograms. It's clear that this will be a powerful weapon for us. I hope that we will continue to move forward. The main thing is to scale up quickly and very logically.
President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated that the Ukrainian ballistic missile is already on its way.
He also instructed to provide separate funding for our Ukrainian ballistic program to speed things up, the production of missiles.
One version is that the armed forces of Ukraine have likely been attacking enemy targets with ballistic missiles for about a year now. After all, many experts and analysts have, from time to time, been unable to identify the weapon used to destroy an enemy target.
The first time successful results were announced was by the president, I recall sometime in July or August of last year. And since then, there have been several occasions when strikes on Russia took place, and there is hope that Ukrainian ballistic missiles were involved in these strikes on Russia.
A domestically produced ballistic missile is truly a breakthrough for the Ukrainian defense industry.
Ukraine began developing such projects even before the war started, and some of these projects were already at the stage of near completion, with prototypes almost ready to be adopted by the military. Ukraine needs to develop its own missile program, and in fact, this missile program was actively pursued in 2023. As part of this program, all developments that were in a more or less prepared or finished state were utilized in order to begin developing Ukraine's own ballistic missile.
Some have speculated that this refers to the Ukrainian Sapsan ballistic missile system, which the president of Ukraine mentioned last year.
Nowhere is it stated what the missile will be called or its exact specifications. More likely, these are even internal upgrades, not so much in a different configuration, but internal ones. And now, all the necessary organizational and management structures have been established to actively launch this project.
After successful testing, the Ukrainian ballistic missile tactical system is to be produced serially.
The optimal option would be a missile with a range to 700 kilometers and equipped with a warhead with a good guidance system, ensuring high missile accuracy at a level of at least 200 kilograms. Well, if it's more, then of course that's even better.
This would allow us to deliver serious strikes against the entire military-industrial complex of the enemy.
A missile with a 300-kilometer range and a 400-kilogram warhead, as stated in the specifications of this missile, will allow us to destroy targets at tactical operational depths. This is also very good because, in fact, all command and control, all military logistics and all depots are located in this zone.
Ukraine has already made attempts to develop a ballistic missile over the past 30 years. At that time, domestic capabilities were limited by the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Everyone remembers when Oreshnik appeared, we learned that there was a treaty on intermediate range and short range missiles. And what was he talking about? He was talking about the fact that the countries and the parties to this treaty are Russia and the USA, do not engage in the development of intermediate range missiles. And an intermediate range missile is from 500 to 500, that's from 500 to 5,500 kilometers. And when Trump, when he was president, found out for the first time from intelligence that the Russians are developing the RS-26 missile, 26 with a range of less than 500 kilometers, he withdrew from this treaty, and then Russia withdrew from the treaty as well.
A country undertakes the obligation to produce missiles with a range of no more than 500 kilometers, but only for domestic use.
If they produce them for export, it's no more than 300 kilometers. So I think that the Ukrainian development of a ballistic missile is currently within the export restrictions, but I am almost certain that its range will be increased to 500 kilometers.
The Ukrainian defense industrial complex is making successful progress in developing weaponry.
It will continue to develop towards a range of 500 kilometers, though perhaps the warhead might be slightly reduced, but I think that most likely even without reducing the warhead.
The missile program is a strategic security factor for Ukraine. This is a breakthrough and a trump card in the hands of a country defending itself against Putin and his military machine. The development and production of Ukrainian missiles will allow us to independently address the destruction of Russia's military capabilities in its aggressive war against Ukraine.
That's all for now. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo. Even more hellish news from the front in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you!